On April 13, 1919, British troops under General Dyer fired 1,650 rounds into an unarmed crowd in Amritsar, killing hundreds. This wasn't rogue brutality, it was sanctioned by colonial law. The martial law ordinance permitted lethal force against unlawful assemblies, illustrating how violence was codified into British rule from the outset. The British perfected legalized violence through decrees like the 1818 Collective Punishment Ordinance, allowing entire villages to be burned for individual dissent. In Burma, the Village Act mandated floggings for minor tax delays. These weren't emergency measures, they were deliberate systems, drafted in London and enforced across the empire. Regiments like the West India Regiment, composed of enslaved Africans forced to fight, became legal instruments of terror. The 1857 Punjab Disturbances Act authorized summary executions. In Jamaica, the Morant Bay Act let soldiers shoot suspects without trial. Uniforms and medals concealed the truth. These were death squads with parliamentary approval. The 1823 Masters and Servants Act made worker strikes punishable by whipping. In Ceylon's tea plantations, the Coolie Ordinance allowed overseers to chain laborers for laziness. Tax laws in Bengal triggered the 1943 famine. 6 million starved while Britain exported grain. Profit wasn't a byproduct of empire. It required systematic, legalized cruelty. Britain's 1952 emergency regulations turned Kenya into a laboratory of legalized horror. Over 1 million Kikuyu were forced into barbed wire villages. Courts authorized castrations and screenings, electrocuting suspects. The Forced Confession Ordinance made torture evidence admissible. This wasn't war, it was bureaucracy fueling genocide. In Trinidad, the 1884 Shooting Ordinance let judges sentence protesters to firing squads. India's 1871 Criminal Tribes Act declared entire ethnic groups born criminals, enforced by magistrates. Even when evidence proved innocence, like in the 1946 Calcutta trials, colonial judges upheld convictions. The law wasn't blind, it winked at empire. The 1915 Defense of India Act made public hangings mandatory for sedition. In Barbados, the slave code required severed heads to be displayed on pikes. Even children weren't spared. Australia's Aboriginal Protection Acts allowed whipping boys for speaking native languages. Violence wasn't exceptional, it was the empire's heartbeat. India's 1930 Salt March deliberately broke the salt tax. Britain's violent response proved Gandhi's point. Jamaica's 1831 Baptist War saw 60,000 enslaved people revolt against apprenticeship laws. Even in concentration camps like Kenya's, prisoners scratched protest hymns onto tin cups. Every law meant to break them became a blueprint for rebellion. Mau Mau survivors still demand reparations for British-sanctioned torture. The doctrine of discovery, used to steal indigenous land, remains cited in modern courts. From Kashmir to Northern Ireland, Britain's colonial playbook of legalized violence evolved into today's counterinsurgency manuals. The empire died, but its laws still kill. When Britain's 2021 police bill restricted protests, critics noted its resemblance to 19th century riot acts. The same logic that justified Amritsar now fuels drone strikes and mass surveillance. Understanding colonial legal violence isn't about history, it's recognizing the system's enduring blueprint. The court gavels still sound, only the robes have changed.